This show is sponsored by Liquid IV. I'm actually at the beach right now, and this year I brought Liquid IV. Visit liquidiv.com and use code WEIRDEST at checkout for 20% off your first order. Liquid IV is scientifically formulated to help replenish electrolytes and fluids lost from sweat or exercise. Just one stick and 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. No matter what your summer brings, tear, pour, live more. Go to liquidiv.com and get 20% off your first order with code WEIRDEST at checkout. That's 20% off your first order with code WEIRDEST at liquidiv.com. When it starts getting warmer, I always feel that urge to go refresh my closet. But I don't want to waste money on pieces I'll only wear once or even just for the season. With Quince, we can do better. Their clothes are timeless, lightweight, and just way classier than most things you can find at the same price. Like 100% European linen shorts and dresses from $30, Italian leather platform sandals, and so much more. Quince says everything they sell is half the cost of similar brands. Give your summer closet an upgrade with Quince. Go to quince.com/weirdest for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/weirdest to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/weirdest. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality, in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance, are verified nearby, are a good fit for any medical need you have, and are highly rated by verified patients. ZocDoc genuinely makes my life easier, and I bet it'll make your life easier too. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/weirdest to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/weirdest. ZocDoc.com/weirdest.
At Popular Science, we report and write dozens of science and tech stories every week. And while most of the stuff we stumble across makes it into our articles, we also find plenty of weird facts that we just keep around the office. So we figured, why not share those with you? Welcome to The Weirdest Thing I Learned This Week from the editors of Popular Science.
I'm Rachel Feldman.
I'm Laura Bisis.
And I'm Casey Johnston.
Casey, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
I've been a fan of your work for a long time, but for any listeners who don't know, would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I am a writer and author. I've covered tech, science, and health in turns for my whole career. And this most recent book I've written is about my experience getting into strength training.
Cool. And what's the book called?
The book is called A Physical Education.
Excellent. It's great. Highly recommend it. And we're really excited to have you on Weirdest Thing. So let's get right into it. So on The Weirdest Thing I Learned This Week, we start by each offering up a tease about some kind of fact or story that we found in the course of reading, writing, reporting, etc., and decide which one we just absolutely have to hear more about first. Then once we've all had time to spin our little science yarns, we reconvene and decide what the weirdest thing we learned this week actually was. Sort of. Nobody wins anymore. It's just kind of, we wrap up the show and then it's over. Laura, what's your tease?
Horny fruit flies. Could save lives.
Oh, wow. I thought it was just going to end with horny fruit flies,
no,
but
dramatic
it got
pause.
Better.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Great.
Yep.
Casey, what's your tease?
My tease is women are stronger than men.
Excellent.
All righty.
Can't wait to hear more. All right. My tease is for young male capuchin monkeys on Jicaron Island in Panama, this year's hottest trend is cross-species kidnapping. It's that thing of when you wear a smaller monkey like a backpack. And this is real. Laura, why don't you start us off with horny fruit flies today?
Happily. That is a sentence I never thought anybody would ever say to me, but here we are. The beauty of being a science journalist. So fruit flies are an incredibly important species for medical science. They reproduce rapidly, have some fairly simple genetics, yet many of those genes are actually shared with humans, so they can be really good proxies in a lab. They're so important that 6 Nobel Prizes have been based on research with fruit flies. But like any living organism, they are not invincible. Every now and then, fruit flies and other insects get infected with a bacteria called Wolbachia. It's a parasitic bacteria that lives inside of insect cells and can drastically alter their sex lives and thus their ability to reproduce. Entomologists believe that it infects at least 2 out of every 5 insect species.
Wow.
And while that might not sound like a lot right away, these 6-legged bugs pretty much outnumber all other life on Earth. There are at least 5.5 million insect species and counting. So a lot of different species are susceptible to this specific parasitic bacteria. Understanding how even smaller organisms like bacteria affect insects could have some wide-ranging impacts on fighting mosquito-borne diseases in humans, like malaria, dengue, and Zika. And that is what a study recently published in the journal Cell Reports is working towards. Now, first and foremost, Wolbachia, bacterial parasite. So it has one primary goal, and that is spreading to more and more hosts. That's really what they live for. However, it can only pass from an infected mother insect to her offspring. So in order to kind of game the reproductive system and improve its chances of spreading, Wolbachia makes it so that infected females lay lots and lots of infected eggs. The bacteria also makes it so that an infected male fruit fly is completely unable to fertilize a female's egg if it's not infected. So basically an uninfected female would kind of mean game over for the bacteria. Since this same effect happens to males in other insect species, harnessing that power of the bacteria is what kind of has the potential for insect control, which we'll get to a little later. In females, it makes the bugs a little bit, how should I say this, kind of, really ready to reproduce, makes them a little more horny. They are way more likely to mate more frequently and even will lay more eggs when they're infected with Wolbachia. The bacteria also makes them so much more inclined to mate that they will even accept other species of insects as mates and lay hybrid eggs.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, if we are running down the slippery slope of anthropomorphizing while also going with kind of like the unfair patriarchal standards for female behavior, it makes them more promiscuous. Don't like the word, but that's what's kind of happening here. And also, just like in humans, where women's health remains grossly understudied, we know far less about how the bacteria affects female insects, while Wolbachia's effects on males are much more well studied. Same in the insect world. Gotta love it. Luckily, this new study kind of aims to be another step towards learning more about the effects on females by looking at what the bacteria is doing on their cells and how it's changing them. So to start with, to kind of figure all of this out, we have to look at how these flies select their mates. In order to do that, female fruit flies rely on some key brain functions, including sensing and decision-making. And when the team studied the brains of female fruit flies that are infected with Wolbachia, they found the bacteria in those regions of the brain that are responsible for decision-making and sensing. So that means the bacteria is kind of in that perfect position to influence their mating choices and also mating behaviors. They then compared the proteins in both infected and uninfected female brains and found that the protein levels in the infected brains were clearly different. More than 170 proteins were changed to varying levels, some increased, some decreased. Now, when the team changed the levels of 3 of the proteins in the uninfected flies, what do you think the flies started to do?
Be horny.
Yes, they began to act horny just like the infected ones. And then over the course of this work, they identified over 700 Wolbachia proteins in female fruit fly brains. And 2 out of that 700 interacted directly with the host fly's proteins, which turns out to be the proteins that are tied to mating behavior.
How do they specify how a female fruit fly acts horny? Is it just like more mating or like a mating dance of some kind? Or is there like a what indicates?
They didn't go too much into the specifics, like with a mating dance or anything, but it was just that they were trying to reproduce more and then also having arguably higher success because they were laying more eggs.
Okay.
So
I was just like, how do you know what
she's
she's thinking? Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
totally.
That's the danger in so many of these types of, again, you can anthropomorphize so quickly, and I don't think we'll ever know their actual intent, but but based on those types of metrics, as far as like observed sexual activity and also the amount of eggs that they lay, that's kind of the metric that we'll use.
It would just be so crazy if like the actual thought process was like the bacteria, it makes you be like, I'm dying like right now and I have to reproduce.
Absolutely.
Not like, you know what I feel like doing is
right.
reproducing,
Totally.
It's kind of like cicadas, they basically, that's their swan song. I mean, they live underground. They have interesting lives under there. They come up, they mate, they die. So I'd love to be able to track that like for real. So we could finally like answer those questions. Maybe one day, we'll see. There's going to be a call and repeat, or there's going to be a part where I ask you to say something coming up. You'll definitely know the answer. Please don't leave me hanging. I don't want this to fall. I don't want this to fall. I meant to say that earlier. So the Wolbachia bacteria makes some nutrients for its hosts, which might give the infected flies some kind of yet to be determined advantage. That's another sort of thing that we don't know, is kind of like what these cells are doing. This pattern of a bacteria making something for its host that it can't make is not completely unheard of in nature, and it's actually seen in something you probably remember from 6th grade science class. Mitochondria, aka the let's
Powerhouse
say it all
of the
together.
cell. Sorry, I got too excited.
Beautiful. Yes, mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, which kind of, I feel like that's like a sleeper agent line that every millennial has.
It's
I tried to work it into my book, and then I was like, I have to take this out, but because it wasn't really working. But I so badly wanted it in there.
Fun fact: Scientific American, the home of my other podcast, Science Quickly, coined that phrase originally. Yeah.
Whoa.
Did they copyright it? Like, do I need to pay them now?
I don't think we're infringing on anything.
All right.
It's just something that people at Scientific American are rightfully very proud of.
I'm not a tattoo person, but I'd get that tattooed to my forehead if I came up with something like that like an entire generation of people basically says instantly. So anyway, yes, the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. The mighty mitochondria that we all know and love initially began its tenure billions of years ago as a simple bacteria that infected cells. They made themselves so useful to the cells that they ended up powering them. The team believes that a similar process might be happening in Wolbachia. It's not saying that this bacteria is going to replace mitochondria in any way. It's just a similar process might be happening.
So if we can harness the power of Wolbachia, we can power the earth.
We could power the earth, or at least, I don't know, maybe make a female Viagra. That was one of my first thoughts, was like, oh, would this be able to like help with things like that during menopause and perimenopause? But we're so not there yet, because we need to actually learn more about both of those things first. But also importantly, how does this tie into preventing deadly mosquito-borne illnesses? Some other research has shown that Wolbachia can actually block viruses like Zika and dengue from ever growing in mosquitoes. However, the efforts to do that, again, those efforts to control dangerous diseases and reduce mosquito populations have been met with some mixed success. One of the authors of this new study about Wolbachia, Timothy Carr of Arizona State University, believes that one of the primary reasons that these solutions as far as mosquito and bug control haven't worked is because they don't really understand what's happening at that cellular and molecular basis. He said, quote, "To cure any disease, to perfect any technique in biology, you need to know who the players are, and you need to know how they work." So that better understanding of how these Wolbachia proteins interact with their host proteins could improve some strategies to manage disease-carrying insects and possibly even create safer pesticides to be used on crops. It's kind of like the even tinier cellular version of those studies where, as far as like deactivating mosquito sperm so that the infected ones can't reproduce. Now, since it is mosquito season in many parts of the world, I do have to get up on my soapbox to wrap this up, just to reiterate some quick mosquito safety. The CDC recommends, importantly, using an EPA-registered insect repellent, wearing long-sleeve clothing when you're walking in the forests and meadows and other places where they congregate. That also will protect you from the sun, so 2 for the price of 1 there. Make sure that your screen doors are patched and repaired to keep them from getting in, and remove standing water that can collect in toys and garden tools at least once a week. PopSci also has a great step-by-step for creating a mosquito kill bucket to help reduce mosquitoes in and around your backyard without using pesticides. I actually have 2 going right now, and so far so good. And it's more than anything been a very fun conversation starter with the neighbors as to why I'm playing with these random buckets in my yard. So yeah, horny fruit flies could save lives by helping us learn how to control more mosquito reproduction.
Wow. Well, fingers crossed.
Right. This is the kind of science I would, as a very mosquito bite prone person, this is the kind of, and in all seriousness, while not a huge problem in the United States, these diseases are incredibly deadly elsewhere, and with climate change are only going to be growing. So any kind of research that we can do to sort of stem that would be excellent.
Absolutely.
Did you know, I didn't know this before I moved to California, and I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush because someone's going to email me and be like, you're wrong. But there didn't really used to be mosquitoes in Southern California. Like, I'm from upstate New York, where it's like, that's mosquito country, probably second only to like the South or, the swamps, but like very mosquito-y, lots of lakes. It's moist, but they didn't have them here. And it's like, just recently they've started to, like, I don't know if they're migrating here because it's more weather or whatever, but I was surprised to learn that, like when my husband was a child in Southern California, like they just didn't have them. And I never really thought about that.
Yeah.
That you could live a mosquito-free existence.
I kind of just imagine that I'm from Southern New Jersey. You just kind of imagine that they're everywhere. Wow. I guess maybe changes in monsoon patterns, something like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
We had a terrible mosquito problem in our backyard in New York, too. It was really, really bad. So I've experimented also with like creating toxic to mosquitoes bodies of water to try and eradicate them, and I don't think it ever really helped. But
yeah, this is my first year in this house. It's kind of the first thing I want to try before doing like anything else, just to see if it'll actually kind of work. But again, I've been outside a couple of times and so far so good. We'll see.
Okay.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, I'd really like it to work.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break and then we'll be back with some more facts.
This show is sponsored by Liquid IV. I'm actually at the beach right now, and before I headed out here, I made sure that I had some electrolytes. This year, I brought Liquid IV because during peak hydration season, Liquid IV is the perfect companion for your hottest summer plans. Visit liquidiv.com and use code WEIRDEST at checkout for 20% off your first order. Liquid IV is scientifically formulated to help replenish electrolytes and fluids lost from sweat or exercise. It has 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, plus 8 vitamins and nutrients, all in a single stick. You can use it for a hydration boost before a workout, when you're feeling run down, on long flights, or after a long night out. Plus, Liquid IV has Plus, if you really want to lean into the summer vacation vibes, you can get fun flavors like cotton candy or popsicle firecracker. Just 1 stick and 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. No matter what your summer brings, tear, pour, live more. Go to liquidiv.com and get 20% off your first order with code WEIRDEST at checkout. That's 20% off your first order with code WEIRDEST at liquidiv.com. When it starts getting warmer, I always feel that urge to go refresh my closet. But I don't want to waste money on pieces I'll only wear once or even just for the season. With Quince, we can do better. Their clothes are timeless, lightweight, and just way classier than most things you can find at the same price. Like 100% European linen shorts and dresses from $30, luxe swimwear, Italian leather platform sandals, and so much more. The best part is that Quince says everything they sell is half the cost of similar brands. By working directly with top artisans and cutting out the middleman, Quince says they give you luxury without the markup. Even better, Quince says they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. I'm in the market for some new sandals and some new lightweight pants, and I'll definitely be checking out Quince for some options. And on chilly summer nights, I'll still reach for my Quince cashmere cardigan. Give your summer closet an upgrade with Quince. Go to quince.com/weirdest for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/weirdest to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/weirdest.
Okay, we're back. And Casey, I think you have something to share with us from your book.
Yes. So, yeah, my teaser was women are stronger than men. And I don't mean emotionally, although that's also true, or mentally, although that's also true. I do mean physically. So this section in my book, which covers a lot of different angles of what happens with our bodies when we start strength training and interrogating a lot of the forces that lead us to even, or led me to buy into diet culture. It was like, why was I into this? And then what allowed me to sort of slowly work my way out of it? What was it about not just starting to lift weights, but what did lifting weights, what changes did it cause in me sort of mentally, emotionally, and physically? So with that said, this is a pretty self-contained section in the book, but it follows a scene where I arm wrestle 3 different guys at a party, a drunken party, where I say to a friend, I've started lifting weights, and one guy overhears me and he's like, make a muscle. No, you're not strong at all. Like, arm wrestle me, prove it. And then it's the kind of thing where a lot of men, some absurd proportion of men think they can take a point off of Serena Williams. It's like, I think every guy thinks he can beat every woman at arm wrestling, but then I beat all 3 of them. So I was like diving into the science of that a little bit here. So I'll just read the section and then, stop me if you have questions, but here we go. I could hardly believe my success at arm wrestling, even if it was only my 3 semi-wasted friends whom I'd beaten. But I'd wondered if I might be stronger than I looked, and even suspected that I might be, especially when it came to doing feats of strength over and over. I knew that, on average, the very strongest men could usually lift more weight than the very strongest women in a single go. But I'd also recently learned that this wasn't the only way of measuring strength. I'd always heard that women tend to have more of those type 1 muscle fibers built for endurance tasks like running or doing thousands of crunches. Men, meanwhile, were purported to have more of the fast-twitch type 2 muscle fibers used for raw strength tasks like heaving boulders and carrying damsels to safety. In the fitness world, this was often flattened into, women should exercise like this, cardio, Pilates, gentle body weight movements done for hundreds of reps, and men should exercise like that, lifting weights, hitting tires with mallets, picking up and carrying damsels to safety. Once again, science was being used to make it seem like women had no place struggling and straining with heavy weights, exerting force, or exhibiting strength. But when I looked closer, these stereotypes were bunk. Women tend to have between 7 and 23% more type 1 muscle fibers than men. That's all. Not 3 times as many, or twice as many, or even 50% more. Only a scant double digits % more in most people. If I have 100 jelly beans, and you have 7% more jelly beans than me, you would have 107 jelly beans. A random person looking at our 2 jars of jelly beans wouldn't even be able to tell the difference. This is not nearly enough of a difference to suggest that women ought to train night and day differently from men. More to the point, these differences mean women are weaker than men only if we measure strength in one extremely specific way. Because of the diversity in muscle fibers, women's muscles tend to have a higher density of capillaries and thus more blood flow than men's do. This, combined with the impact of higher levels of estrogen and progesterone, mean women tend to be more fatigue resistant, allowing them to do more overall work than men's fibers before getting tired. Not only that, women recover more quickly, meaning they can get up and do more all over again sooner. Is this female blend of muscle fibers, for certain definitions of work, superior to men's? Yes, actually, depending on how we define strength. Let's take an untrained woman of roughly the same height and starting weight of a similarly untrained man. Let both of them train hard, lifting heavy weights for 10 years. At the end of that 10 years, that woman can deadlift 400 pounds. The man can deadlift 600 pounds. These are not world record-setting numbers, but enough to make both of them nationally competitive. But usually we'd say that the man is way stronger than the woman because the way we usually define strength is whoever can lift the most weight. First, it would be ridiculous to say that a woman who can lift 400 pounds or even 100 pounds is not strong just because she may never be able to lift 600 pounds. To steer anyone away from lifting because they could only learn to lift a staggering 400 pounds instead of 600 pounds would be like telling someone they shouldn't go to math class because they might only become Neil Armstrong instead of Marie Curie. And then, sure, the man in this thought experiment can lift more absolute weight once in a single rep attempt. This is how strength is defined in lifting competitions. But why? As we noted earlier, women tend to have a greater potential to do more heavy work on the same day and recover faster. Maybe the man can lift 600 pounds once, and he's wiped out for several days. But the woman is more likely to be able to lift 90% of her max, 360 pounds, for 5 reps in one go. In lifting, we would calculate the total tonnage of these reps as 5 times 360, or 1,800 pounds. The same man may only be able to lift 90% of his max for 3 reps, for 3 times 540, which is 1,620 pounds in tonnage. If the gold standard of strength performance were total tonnage and not 1-rep maxes, it's very likely that women would be topping the charts over men on a regular basis. Not only that, but women are more likely to be able to do 5 reps at that weight all over again the day after tomorrow, thanks to their superior recovery. The man, meanwhile, needs more days to lie on his fainting couch, waiting until his inferior muscles with less blood flow and less fiber diversity can rally back to fighting form. What if the hardest task were not doing a difficult thing once and then having to lie down, but being able to do it over and over again on more days of the week in and week out? But for a subtle shift in how we define our terms and how we set priorities and strength training goals, women are, in fact, better suited and more genetically predisposed to strength train and work with heavy weights. It doesn't wipe women out as much. They can do more reps in less time on more days of the week. Perhaps men should leave the scary weights that tire them out so much to women who can handle it.
Nice.
I love that. So fun.
Yeah.
And I'm such a fan of when we play with using the kind of language that is so ubiquitous when it comes to how we talk about women and fitness for men, because I was like, I can already feel some man somewhere being so angry. It's like, the joke is very clear, actually.
Right. And it's like, none of these things should be considered like objectively better than one or the other. Like there's a place in the world for both of those types of strength, but they're the ones, but like there is a way we concretely think of it. Like this is how competitions are structured for strength. There's no competition that I know of that's structured in the way that would facilitate women having better numbers, you know? So, but why? You know, we must ask.
Yeah. Well, it makes me think of a while back, we had one of our frequent contributors and seasoned marathon runners, Claire Maldarelli, talked about how once you get into ultra marathons, women start outperforming men. And a lot of people will be like, it's the mental fortitude. And it's like, that's, you know, it's not that it's a diss to say that these female competitors have mental fortitude, but you know, there's also something very silly about dismissing any potential physiological explanation for being better at endurance sports than men.
Mm-hmm. The same thing happens when you get to that ultra level with marathon swimming. Sarah Thomas is the record holder as far as 4-time consecutive back-to-back English Channel swims. No man has come close to that. And very often with swimming, you get the, oh, women have more body fat argument. And while yes, in cold water, certain types of body fat are absolutely going to help you, and then pile on the mental fortitude. Yes, that's part of it. But why can't it just be, no, we're just stronger swimmers when it comes to having to do something repetitive and keep going?
Mm-hmm. I do want to say that the gender, I have a note in the book somewhere that's sort of like gender essentialism.
Right.
Aside, not that everyone can lay it aside, but it's like the genderedness of this is sort of like two peaks on a spectrum versus like one group is like this and one group is like that. And there's obviously, if you look around the world, there are women who who build muscle much more easily, who have maybe a balance of their natural hormone profiles facilitate that, and the opposite can be true of men. It's like there's not, I think I said, just as not every woman is taller, or not every man is taller than every woman, not every man is stronger than every woman.
Right.
Right.
But all that said, I think there's also a huge dearth of research on women and any kind of physical training. There's also a part in the book where I talk about how for a very long time in studying strength and lots of types of exercise, women are basically minimized or abstracted to be considered small men, or as I think I call them, worse men. They're men without the testosterone, basically, men without the muscle mass. But there has been very little study of the contributions of the stereotypical female genetic profiles, the contributions of higher estrogen, higher progesterone, for instance, to physical pursuits. Women have not been studied specifically because they're considered, quote unquote, more complicated because of their menstrual cycles and a few other things. But the fact that they seem to not be stronger is because very, very little attention has been paid to what are the unique contributions of non-stereotypically male biological markers.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's an issue in so much of the research on humans in general, where it's like if your default specimen is a European man and everything is sort of being judged as, how different it is from that, there are questions you won't even think to ask. There are differences that you will never understand. And, that's also why we don't know enough about female fruit flies. It's because
it all comes back to that.
Yeah. They look at animals and they say, ooh, the hormones, though. Mm-hmm. As if male fruit flies don't have hormones.
Mm-hmm. Or even body size. Like the whole, Darwin was like, oh, it's the bigger iguana. That's definitely the male, when in a lot of species, the females are bigger.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like even the hormonal cycle, it's like there could be contributions of having lower hormones at one point and higher hormones at another point. But no one wants to look into that because they're just like, oh, it's quote unquote more complicated. But what if it's more complicated because it's better in some way? Why is no one asking this question?
One little gleam of hope I've gotten in the past couple of weeks related to this is there are a couple of studies now being funded about ACL tears in soccer players and the menstrual cycle. If you follow women's soccer the way that I do, or even if you're just kind of a fan on the sidelines, their ACL tears are constantly taking women's soccer players out. Midge Purse, I believe, had to miss the most recent World Cup. There are some amazing players who are taken out by these ACL tears at higher rates. So to finally have, maybe finally have some answers would be awesome for the game and awesome for then understanding injury prevention, even if you aren't a professional soccer player, if you're just casually trying to exercise because you like it and it feels good and it's good for you. So that was when I saw that, I was like, okay, everything's on fire now, but at least we're getting that study. Yay.
Yeah, one at a time. Hopefully more are coming. Mm-hmm. All right, we're going to take another quick break and then we'll be back with one more fact.
When was the last time you really needed to go to a doctor, but you just kept pushing it off? Making excuses like, I'm too busy, or it'll just get better on its own, right? We've all been there. But thanks to ZocDoc, there's no reason to keep putting it off. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality, in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance, are verified nearby, are a good fit for any medical need you have, and are highly rated by verified patients. We're talking about more than 100,000 doctors across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, primary care to urgent care, and more. Once you find the right doctor, you can see their actual appointment openings, choose a time slot that works for you, and click to instantly book a visit. ZocDoc genuinely makes my life easier, and I bet it'll make your life easier too. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/weirdest to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/weirdest. ZocDoc.com/weirdest.
Okay, we're back, and I'm going to talk about the kidnapping trend among male capuchin monkeys.
The thing to do.
Yeah. So I'll start with a disclaimer that this story will at times seem like it's going to be really cute, but it is actually horrifying. And I think the researchers behind it are genuinely hoping it will give you an existential crisis. So just bear that in mind as we begin.
That's an existential crisis warning, not a trigger warning.
I mean, both, but, you know. So this starts back in 2022 when a doctoral researcher named Zoe Goldsboro, she was part of a team who were reviewing camera trap footage from Jicaron Island, which is off the coast of Panama. And it's this very hard to get to, hard to navigate, uninhabited island, though it is still covered in trash, as they noted in some of their supplementary materials. They were like, you may be wondering why our videos of this uninhabited island have trash. And that's just because the ocean is so full of trash that even though humans don't come to this island, our trash still makes it there. So that's our first bummer note of several. Sorry. But it's home to a population of white-faced capuchin monkeys that scientists find really fascinating because of their tool use. So there are actually many capuchin species that use tools, but white-faced capuchins are in a genus that pretty much just doesn't do that. And the monkeys on Jicaron are a rare exception. And only the male monkeys there use tools, which is very interesting. So scientists want to understand how and why that came to be, but the island is pretty difficult for researchers to spend time on, hence the camera traps, which have been there since 2017. So it's 2022, and this researcher is reviewing the footage, and she sees something very weird. She sees a capuchin monkey carrying an infant howler monkey on its back, like a little backpack. Again, this is a moment where it seems like it's going to be really cute. Don't be fooled. Now, the easiest explanation for this would be a cross-species adoption, which would be very cute. Those aren't super common, but they're also not unheard of. Back in 2004, a researcher in Brazil spotted a different species of capuchin caring for a young marmoset like it was her own. And locals confirmed that, like, yeah, she does that. She's been doing that for a while. That's her baby marmoset. Yeah. And this can even happen with, like, radically different species. A lioness once famously seemed to adopt a group of young gazelles. Who knows what was going on there? But the general consensus about cross-species adoption is that, like, there is this innate caretaking instinct that can lead animals to sometimes just really want to care for a cute little thing they see, even if it would traditionally be their prey. And, you know, love comes in all forms. So, but that's not what's going on here. There are some instances of males adopting members of their own species, especially if they're in same-sex partnerships, like we've talked about penguins doing in captivity. But scientists don't tend to see this cross-species caretaking behavior in males. If they do, it's generally because there's some obvious benefit for the young male, like making him get more attention from females of his own species, kind of like a Brooklyn dog dad in the park. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, he's so cute, he's so paternal. Plus, this species of capuchin doesn't have particularly parental males. They do some parenting, but like their interactions with their own kids are like pretty minimal and basic. So it's highly unlikely that they're like practicing for parenthood or playing out some inescapable caretaking instinct, because like these are not seahorses. Like capuchin monkeys are not dads of the year. So The researcher took the weird footage to her advisor, being like, what do you think is going on here? And they decided she should go through a year's worth of video manually to see if she could construct some kind of narrative to explain this behavior. And, you know, going through the footage, she ended up finding video of 4 different baby howler monkeys being carried around, mostly by this one young male she nicknamed Joker. But then the behavior disappeared, and they figured, like, okay, this guy tried something weird and then he got over it. Maybe we'll never know why, which animals sometimes do. Like, they just like people, sometimes someone will just get a weird thought in their head and do a behavior. And if a human happens to see it, sometimes it'll cause a big hubbub. And then it's just like, oh, that was a thing that briefly happened to one guy. But then something surprising showed up on footage from 5 months later. They saw more baby howlers getting carried. And in fact, there were now another 4 young male capuchins doing the carrying. So this is a trend. It spread. And for 15 months, the 5 males, including the Joker, carried around at least 11 different baby howler monkeys, sometimes kind of backpack style. Sometimes they would be clinging to their bellies. It was all like very similar to how the baby howlers would have instinctively clung to their mom. And these guys just went about their everyday business. They like used tools. They went around the island. They really didn't seem to treat the howlers as anything but living accessories. So in other words, it was like kind of a fashion trend or maybe a weird sport or both, but very bizarre and surprising. And on the one hand, these capuchins don't seem to have particularly malicious intent. They're not hurting the howler monkeys in any outright way, but the howler babies are clearly there under duress, which, you know, I think some people might not realize if they come across this story and don't, you know, read past the first paragraph. Because when you see the photos, it's like the howler babies are clinging to them. But again, that's like a very instinctive thing. But the researchers did capture footage of the babies making these calls that they do when they're lost. And they even heard their parents calling back for them on the tape. And they also even saw some instances of the howler babies trying to run away and getting like dragged back by the capuchins. Sometimes one of the capuchins would set the howler down and leave, like they were just over it. And then another of the male capuchins who were participating in the trend would come by and pick them up. Like, oh, wow. I see you dropped your backpack. I'll take that. And it's pretty likely that this kidnapping trend ended badly for all of the howler monkeys involved. The researchers did see a few of the babies die of malnourishment. Again, the capuchins weren't hurting them, but they also weren't their mothers, so nobody was taking care of the babies. And they suspect that similar fates befell all 11 of them, though they didn't see them on camera. So, like, we can hold out hope that maybe some of the howler monkeys got their babies back. And that is not totally outside the realm of possibility for reason I'll talk about in a minute. That's obviously tragic, but what happens next makes this even more kind of inexplicable. The capuchins haven't been seen eating or even playing with the bodies. One clip caught a couple of them sort of tugging at a baby howler, but the researchers say that behavior is identical to the kind of rudimentary wellness check they'd give to an ailing or dead member of their own species. So if the howler babies aren't meant to end up as snacks or playthings, why are the capuchins stealing them? The researchers also noted that the capuchins participating in this trend didn't get any new or different attention from other members of their own species. The other capuchins seemed to completely ignore that this was going on. Capuchins and howlers don't eat the same food, so it's not like this was an effort to weed out competition. And howler monkeys, especially adult howler monkeys, are actually bigger than capuchins, especially adolescent capuchins. So stealing one of their kids could be dangerous, though that also gives us hope that maybe some of them were able to get their babies back. Though the researchers did say that while howlers are much bigger, they're also much slower, so they're not totally unevenly matched. But still, why is this happening? It seems like a lot of effort for something that they don't get a clear benefit out of.
And something that they're not necessarily naturally geared to be doing anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. There's nothing natural about this for them. Well, there's maybe one thing about it that's natural, but I'll get to that in a second. The answer is probably the same as why the males started using tools, which is boredom. They are bored. There are no predators on Hikaron, and food is very plentiful. Males don't have much to do, especially before they've got kids of their own. So they try out weird stuff to pass the time, and sometimes those behaviors catch on. For, whatever reason the Joker had for doing what he did, other males saw it and it became a trend. And one of the researchers said, they did occasionally see them being affectionate towards the howler monkey babies or treating them like they were, small members of their own species. But they said, it's like a kid with a jar of lightning bugs. They can think it's really cool and, care about it, but it's still not a good situation for the lightning bugs. And the thing that the researcher said that, again, I feel is really meant to make us have a little bit of an existential crisis is they said, we show that non-human animals also have the capacity to evolve cultural traditions without clear functions, but with destructive outcomes for the world around them.
Ouch.
Ouch. And, as I said, there is one aspect of this that, may be linked to natural behavior. Males leave the group they were born into to find a new group to try to sort of take over there. But they need a lot of male allies to do that. So when they're young, they do a lot of things to try to bond with other young males. And sometimes, apparently, they'll sort of just grab an unrelated male infant and carry them around to be like, hey, buddy, why don't you hang out with me? The thing is that when that happens with other capuchins, the mom will grab the baby back eventually because they're right there. And they're like, give me back my son. Never speak to my son again. But it's there is sort of this, even though it's very different in how it plays out, they do technically have sort of an instinct to kidnap infants. So it's possible that explains why this very weird thing happened once. And then just because the howler monkey mom didn't successfully get the baby back, it was oh, I guess this is the thing now. I guess I'm carrying this small creature with me forever now. We don't know if this is ongoing. The study's camera trapping period ran from January 2022 to July 2023. So they're still analyzing some data, and, we don't have the most recent data. They're really hopeful that it's not something that's going to continue because howler monkeys are not doing super well population-wise on this island. So it's really the last thing they need to have capuchins stealing their babies. But, at least when they were looking at it, it seemed like it was this small-scale thing that was going to burn out. So fingers crossed. But animals are weird. We're weird. Trends are weird. And it really got me thinking about just why we pick up on behaviors that we see other people doing. And maybe the next time you want to buy something or do something because you saw it on TikTok, you should be like, is this my kidnapped baby howler monkey? Maybe.
It's just, and the boredom aspect I find kind of fascinating because, yes, there's absolute benefits to boredom. Boredom spurs creativity. You need to be bored, and every second of your day is not supposed to be stimulating and meant to be. You're supposed to do that, but then
not every idea you have is good.
Right,
Such
and not every
thing to know.
Not every idea you have is good, and too much boredom can maybe lead to not have some great ideas. So I found
idle
that
hands,
aspect.
devil's work, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. It's again,
the Puritans
all about
knew.
balance.
But I think it's, the researchers were making a very clear connection to sort of, late stage capitalism and people just kind of sitting around with every luxury in the world and being miserable and bored. And dang, how astute. So good for them. But I'll be keeping an eye on this research project because I'm, horrified and fascinated and very curious to see what the Joker gets up to next. What other trends will he start? He's a menace to society. Who knows?
How long do capuchin monkeys live?
They live 15 to 25 years in the wild. So
okay. So he's going to be doing this for potentially a while.
Though hopefully, he was an adolescent and hopefully soon he'll find an occupation.
So it's like stealing cars when you're a teen. You're like, this is, I don't know what else to do with myself. I'm too young to be a kid, or too old to be a kid, too young to be an adult.
Yeah.
No one lets me do anything. I'm going to commit a little crime.
Yeah, exactly. We need some after-school enrichment for these young male
an after-school
capuchins.
program of some kind. Make them learn a trade.
Yeah.
Yep. Rachel, not that you need any, more on your plate, but I think your next book should be about like animal adolescence and teenagehood and all of the shenanigans that they get up to.
That's a great idea.
Just throwing that out there into the world.
No, I mean, it's not a bad idea. I will consider. Well, this has been great. A lot of weird stuff today. Casey, thanks so much for sharing from your book. Would you remind our listeners what it's called so they can find it?
Yeah, my book is called A Physical Education. The subtitle is How I Escaped Diet Culture and Gained the Power of Lifting.
The Weirdest Thing I Learned This Week is produced by all of our hosts, including me, Rachel Feltman, along with Jess Bodie, who also serves as our audio engineer and editor extraordinaire. Our theme music is by Billy Cadden. Our logo is by Katie Beloff. If you have questions, suggestions, or weird stories to share, tweet us at weirdest_thing. Thanks for listening, weirdos.